Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to TableTakes presented by Gen Con. My name is Christian. I'm joined today by Banzai and Emma with our very special guest, Mr. Hawke Robinson. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.
It's good to see everybody. It's been weeks.
Yeah, no, it's been a whole, year.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I don't think that might be overstating some, but I'm going to go with it. I like it. I haven't seen you guys since last year.
I know.
Missed you so much.
It's been a long time, and it's 2020 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2020.
It's clear
Confirmed
vision.
crit year.
There.
Yeah.
Wait, can I
I like that.
Hello, my name is Christian
stole
Doyle,
it.
and this is 2020. I've always wanted to do that, and I didn't even know it until just now. All right, so we have headlines to cover today. We've got a great topic to talk about, and of course, all of our usual Kickstarters to cover. So let's jump right into it now, starting with, hey, are you French? Guess what? You can't buy D&D anymore. I know. It's not quite as clear-cut and simple as that. But man, what a headline. That would get me to click on it, right?
Yeah, each individual French person now has a person assigned to them, and if they try and buy D&D, it's just slapped out of their hand.
No.
And the worst part is
No
the
D&D
people that
for
they
you.
have assigned to them are German, so it's just an extra slap in the face.
Oh.
That's not a real thing. I
soon.
made literally all of that up.
No.
Don't listen to a word
Too
I
soon?
say.
No.
My resolution for 2020 was to be a big fat liar. I'm halfway there until I put on a few pounds.
So, what actually happened is the D&D license was suspended in France.
Yes.
So that means that game stores in France can't sell copies of D&D. Presumably, people can still get it on
Yeah.
the black market or through other means.
They can still sell what they have, but they can't
Yes.
order anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing about this is we have no information. We don't know why.
Yeah.
We've done research, we tried digging it up, and all they say is hey, you can't buy it or sell it anymore just because. So
WotC has always been very protective about their licensing agreements
Yeah.
and such.
Yeah.
Certainly,
We're
but
lucky
they
that
banned
we
a
have
whole country at this point.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that goes
where does
on
it stop?
that we never hear about with licensing. I mean, we hear about it, but the public doesn't hear about it all the time. We were fortunate that the license we got from WotC, we're able to share publicly. It's because it's a license for us to use their products throughout all of our community programs and other programs. And we've always been going telling around people, go ask. It didn't cost us anything to get the license except time. The hardest part is getting through the corporate firewall. But if you don't do it, we know many people who have been not happy that they tried to do these things without asking permission. That
So
includes
just
if you're
France.
running.
But so France somehow really crossed the line this time.
Well, if you're even a game store and you're charging for your games and stuff like that, be careful. If you're a therapist and such and you're charging for your games and using product and you mention that trademarked product, you need to go ask permission. So, and it is a little hard to get through that, but you want to do this.
Yeah.
Protect yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
you could be France.
Yep.
So that's a potential, presuming, it's weird to happen to
we
a
don't
whole
know.
country, but some sort
Yeah.
of breakdown in the conversations between the government, maybe something lapsed, someone didn't take care of renewing it, maybe.
It'll probably get straightened out.
Yeah. I mean, it just,
Eventually.
what
Of
I
course.
see it is the reason why we don't have a lot of news, it happened right when Christmas is about to hit.
Right.
Christmas and New Year's, and then that essentially just shuts down a lot
Well,
of
annual
areas.
contract renewals.
Yeah.
You see a lot of this. So, for
Yeah.
example, it looks like HBO. I was watching Westworld through my Amazon Prime HBO, and all of a sudden I couldn't watch it because they're pushing this HBO Max thing as of January 1st.
Right.
Oh, that happened
So
to you too.
you're going to see these kinds of things at the
That's
beginning of the
the-
year because license agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the way
not
it
a lot
goes
of
sometimes.
information there. If
Anyway.
you're in France,
Yeah, we wish you a speedy recovery.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's about all I'm going to say about that today.
Yeah.
Our sympathies.
Okay, so I was thinking the other day about because I only have just in the last couple of years gotten into board games and card games the way I am into RPGs, and I've enjoyed deck building games, and now they are making a deck building game of one of my favorite anime of all times. There's going to be a Cowboy Bebop deck building game coming out in March.
Now, mind me, is that
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Trigun? Was that all part of the Cowboy Bebop?
No,
No,
Trigun's
Trigun's a
different.
completely
That's
different
a
animal.
different.
I was watching all that anime with my son years ago,
Yeah.
and it's gotten all cool
Yeah,
flavors,
Cowboy
but-
Bebop is less about cowboys and more about space bounty hunters
Yes,
that
space
they
bounty
call cowboys.
I know I watched it. I don't have
So it's
the right one
Mandalorian
in my head.
before.
It is
the
it's Mandalorian
Ed
before
is
the
the
Mandalorian.
best.
Okay.
Ed is the best. I'm just gonna tell you.
It's like if you wanted to make Boba Fett sexy in the early 90s, that was how you do it,
I mean,
basically.
Boba
Okay.
Fett's a little.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's not bad looking.
I mean, for a
For
suit of
somebody in
armor,
armor.
Yeah,
he's
for
very handsome. Very
Check out
handsome.
that armor.
That armor.
What an attractive
Armor
armor
envy.
set. I think it looks better in Beskar than green, but that's just me.
So the game's going to be called Space Serenade.
Space
Yes.
Serenade, and what a perfect name
It's
for
a
it.
beautiful name.
Yeah.
And what is going to be is, I mean, the idea is obviously you're going to be crew members on the Bebop, which is the ship on the show.
Yeah.
In case,
So I learned.
And you're going to go after criminals, just like they do on the show. And you do this by collecting and building your deck, just like you do in any other deck building game.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. A lot of IP games are based off of the deck building mechanic. I think because at this point it is entering the common vernacular.
Yep, and
Yeah.
because it's easy to pick up.
Yeah.
It's easy to learn.
It's financially lucrative.
No, yeah.
And it's financially lucrative as say like a TCG where you're constantly buying boosters to up your game. This is like everything's there and you're building your deck through the game, and it's a mechanic that almost anybody can latch onto,
Yeah,
casual or not.
And I won't
So-
say it's necessarily easier to design, but it is something that you can take the framework, take a lot of what's gone before, because it's in the common vernacular. It's also, if you make another deck builder, the people who made deck builders before aren't going to be mad about it, because now everyone's done it, and so you can just kind of take these mechanics, tweak them up a little bit, and.
But yeah,
have
like
a game.
DC does a deck builder
Yep.
game. It's very, very popular.
Harry Potter.
Harry
Yeah,
Potter,
Harry Potter. Yeah.
which I've not played. I've played the DC one a bunch.
Yeah.
I'm just excited to see the artwork for this.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
going to be great. I mean, even if it's just stills from the show, it's going to be great because
Yeah.
the artwork on that show was so.
It was really
It was
nice.
so fun to look at.
So the show came out a long time ago.
Well,
Like-
Whoa! Different definitions of long here.
I didn't start watching it until I guess it was like
It was on
2000.
Toonami.
Yeah, it was on
Yeah.
Toonami. It was like 2003, 2004.
It's
Okay,
like the
'cause I know
same
people were watching
generation.
when I was in college, and that was.
Was that a long
Quite a
time
while.
ago?
Yeah.
'Cause
Oh.
it's hard to tell because she's such a baby face.
It is. You're very youthful.
In the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, no,
So-
no. I was just thinking, yeah, the thong song is 20 years old today.
What?
Really? Happy birthday thong song. Cisco, I hope you're getting work somewhere.
I just remembered that randomly somebody telling me that, and I was like, oh yeah, it's been a while.
But it makes me wonder because so many things are coming back, and so
Yeah.
many IPs that are being refreshed. Are they going to do more with Cowboy Bebop?
I
Question
will always watch more Cowboy Bebop.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I made sure to watch
wildly
the movie when it
speculating.
came out in like what was it 2010 or something. I loved it. So yeah, I'll watch anything Cowboy Bebop. I'll also buy anything Cowboy Bebop, which means in March I'm going to be buying this deck building game.
Nice.
I don't even feel bad about it. I
there
don't
you go.
even
You're already
feel
making
bad
plans.
about it. So there you go. Check it out. Coming in March, Cowboy Bebop, Space Serenade.
Yeah.
The deck building game coming to probably a gaming store near you.
Yeah.
Speaking of games that I love,
Yes.
Pathfinder. Tell me all about Pathfinder.
Ooh, so as you guys have been noticing, we've been having a lot of hype for Pathfinder for the past 2019, just going up because they have a new.
The second
new
edition came out and it's been
Second
very,
edition.
very popular
Yep.
Yeah.
and really set itself apart from its predecessor.
Exactly. So the advanced player guide is coming out for second edition.
One of my favorite first edition books.
For release at Q3 of 2020. So yeah. So 2020 is coming
When
in.
does Q3 happen?
There-
I've been at this over a year now, and I'm still like, I know these quarterly reports
It's
come
a
out.
fuzzy line.
It's a fuzzy line.
Fall.
Yeah.
And you know what it actually means?
Summer,
it means we
fall.
don't know yet, but probably this
Summer.
year.
We mean
They'll
summer,
prob-
But
right?
like,
Shoot for Gen Con.
Shoot for Gen Con.
Shooting
Yeah.
for Gen
So
Con.
Shooting
Gen Con,
for
they
Gen.
usually do their early releases there, and then
Yeah.
a month or 2 or 3 later it gets the general
But if
public.
it doesn't happen, it's okay because we didn't specifically
Yeah, you
say.
got 3 month
Yeah.
window there.
Sometime in the third quarter.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, it's just like around Gen Con. It was really what you're gonna just say.
Yeah,
A little
they're
bit.
looking at summer,
Let
but
it
this is a redo of of the second edition of one of my favorite books from the first edition. One that kind of added some new classes
Yes.
and expanded the overall archetypes for characters
Yeah, they're
of
gonna-
every class, and they're looks like they're aiming to do pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, they're adding new ancestries, heritages, 4 new classes: the investigator, oracle, and swashbuckler and witch.
Yes, actually 4 really, really good first edition classes are
Yes.
making it, which is great. Have yet to see the gunslinger, but we'll get there when we get there. I am patient.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have plenty of
Before
hacks for it.
we were on the air talking about, I was asking because we haven't had a chance to. I had gotten the early betas of it, but we never had time because of our other priorities to evaluate it yet. And so you've played the 2nd edition Pathfinder.
Yeah, I've had it since the playtest came out
Right.
two years ago at Gen Con.
And you were saying it's not, before Pathfinder was considered 3.75 D&D basically.
Yes.
You're saying now it's its own thing.
It's really set itself apart in the way character creation works now. It's those ancestries and those backgrounds and your class choice. It's not just I'm an elven fighter anymore.
Yeah.
Everything factors into that base character creation. And then for combat, the action economy that they've come up with is beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is. It simplifies a lot of things that were overly complicated about the first system without sacrificing any of the crunchiness that makes it fun.
Cool.
So action economy in that game is something that is very easy to understand and very easy to use, and it's not something you need to look up and watch, tons and tons of videos about because it's so straightforward.
Okay. Well, it's definitely something we have on our to-do list for evaluating. We just haven't had a chance to with there's so much coming out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you like the crunchiness of building characters that are very, very unique, it has something for you.
We like that.
Yeah, and if you like combat to be somewhat more simple.
Well, in game and settings and systems that encourage a rich background, we're always looking for that as opposed to just to only. I personally like the crunchy numbers and details because Rollmaster and things like that.
Oh yeah, sure.
But not everybody's a fan of that. But it is a wonderful thing to add all that other background. It helps people be able to.
I would call it a little bit rules crunchier than 5th edition D&D.
Okay, well, that's easy.
That makes sense.
Which is not hard to do.
Right.
Well, because
But they still have managed to streamline it in a way that is accessible.
Cool.
For non-gamers too.
We'll definitely
so
check
it's
that
something
out.
you can jump into.
Nice.
It's interesting because on the show recently we've been talking about how 5e is not doing splat books and how they got kind of burned by putting out too many books.
3rd edition
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah, and it seems with
And they've stuck to it. They didn't just say it. It wasn't just a marketing thing, and then they went, "Oh no, never mind. We're going to do it anyway." They've let third parties handle that, and they've kept it to a minimum, at least on the campaigns.
Yeah, going on that core book +1.
But Pathfinder's only had the one book.
Right.
Yeah. So this is like
thus far, yeah. And
For
Pathfinder.
because Pathfinder has a ton of add-ons.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And they've got tons of splat books and tons of options, but at its core, to play Pathfinder, whether game master or player, you've always only needed the core book.
Yeah.
Everything else has been, additions, but these are additions that have become integral to the game so quickly because the archetypes, like the way archetypes, that's the first thing you can really do to your character to set it apart from your average vanilla anything.
Yeah.
Well, on that note about it being just one book, how do you feel about the player's handbook and the GM book being the same one?
I personally love it because it means that as a GM, I don't have to buy extra books for my players.
Which is
I don't
great
have
for
to
the
buy extra
GM.
books for me.
But if you're a player and you're not planning to GM, now you got to buy a $70 book instead of a $50 or $40 book.
Sure.
For just the player's guide.
I mean,
so
you got to buy
generally
you got to buy a $50 book.
well, whatever the
And,
Yeah.
And that it's not any more expensive than any other hardcover.
okay. Well, because the earlier one was
It was like
more,
maybe $10 more.
Okay, I think it was 20 or 30 way back when, but I don't know with the new edition. But we definitely prefer that they're separated. That the players get their player book. They don't need all the GM stuff.
Yeah.
And the GM then has everything that they need in the GM and other books. So, for example, our typical kit, because we put together these kits for all of our community and other programs on wheels, is 3 players' handbooks and then all the stuff the GM needs.
Yeah.
And then pencil, dice.
And one
stacks,
of my
et cetera.
fundamental problems with that is I feel accessibility, because not everybody can afford 3 books.
Yep.
If they want a GM.
Well, the other part is
And the fact that-
the players bring their player handbooks themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't
yes.
need all the other books.
And I totally get that. But if I can play a game where I'm playing with 5 people and we only need the one book,
Sure.
Yeah.
we need the one book to play this game, that screams accessibility for me.
Yeah.
I see that.
It's just it means that everybody can play and you don't have to buy the book if you want to learn how to play.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like for these options.
Everything you need is there.
Yeah, having the additional, I will say there is something very compelling to it. And we were talking, obviously these books are not necessary, but for someone to tell me, he's like, well, I can play Pathfinder, I can be a swashbuckler, and
Yeah.
then say like, well, we've got the core book, you can't be a swashbuckler, and it's like,
Every
well, I'm
table's
gonna
But the
gonna
Pathfinder,
decide.
but the Pathfinder
Like, I'll get the
SRD is
book
there
and-
to make that accessible to you anyway, whether or not you have the book.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Like you can pop online and you can see everything that class has because Paizo has
Yeah.
put that out there for you. It's a
helpful.
tool that you should be using if you can't buy books.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I want to be a swashbuckler. And I'm not playing in a Pathfinder game. If anyone is out there thinking about it and having a swashbuckler, I would be your swashbuckler.
You look like a swashbuckler.
Thank you.
I would absolutely, like, if I saw swashes and they needed to be buckled, I'd be like, I'm calling Emma.
Yes.
It's my special, I have a very particular set of skills. Buckle those swashes.
I will find you, and I will buckle you.
Click it or ticket. Sorry.
But I do think that it runs an interesting parallel to D&D in that way. The fact that the very flagship title for all role-playing games requires you to buy 3 books in order to get into the hobby has always been a sore spot for me. Because
okay.
D&D is such a good game.
Yes.
It really is. And I just think if it was slightly more accessible, cheaper, more people could get into it. If you want to buy 1 book instead of 3, this is one of the many, many, many options that are out there for you to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And like BFRPG, which is a old school, new school, lightweight version, basicfantasy.org. The PDFs are all free, legally free. The rule book is $6, and it is all in one. It's got your player stuff, your DM stuff, and your monsters all in one. There are add-ons you can get.
Right.
But we're actually needing to separate the two because we're trying to create markup language for text readers and create a Braille version.
Right. And then it would be best to
separate.
absolutely
Just
split them up.
just to make it more manageable. But it's $6 for the entire book.
Right.
Printed.
I mean, that's the very definition of accessibility.
Yeah, exactly.
role-playing, and
That's why we're really happy about their price point there.
The thing is about the Pathfinder book, though, the books that they're putting out, to supplement that core book, they're useful. They're
Sure.
things that players want to have. It's not stuff that players have to have.
Yes.
It's things that they want to add to their game, and they're optional for a reason. I think that it's great that they're doing that, so I'm an advocate.
Yeah.
Go Pathfinder.
I think there's more Pathfinder news too, right?
What? Where? I want Pathfinder. Oh my goodness, yes, that's right. So one of the things that I've always liked about Pathfinder is the fact that they have always been really good about putting out those little miniature pawns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are doing that again for the 2nd edition. The Bestiary Pawn Box is coming out, and what it is 375 creatures for the Pathfinder RPG that are little cardboard with little stands that you can just pop out and use for your game and just pop them in. It doesn't cost that much at all. They've always kept the price down to fairly reasonable for cardboard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little pricey, but they're all the artwork is beautiful. Everything is finished very nicely. They don't fall apart in one day. It's very sturdy card stock, and
You have a lot of variety in there
Yeah.
for different.
They're
I
all
know at least for
double-sided.
The character ones, you can have your characters, you can have your creatures. So if you want to have less theater of the mind and more, these are the things in front of me. And a lot of
which
people.
Pathfinder really supports because of the way their grid system works.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
Yeah.
Another thing we realized that the card and plastic and it's so different than the normal miniatures is when we're streaming and we've got the overhead cam and the battle mat. It's actually helpful for the audience. We lay them flat, and they can
nice.
actually see
Yeah.
much better when it's laid flat. Whereas the miniatures, it's hard to tell who is which
Yeah, okay.
from the overhead view.
Right.
Unless we tilt it more at an angle. And
Yeah, I
such.
think it's
so we found
important
that was helpful.
for viewers and for players as well, because I've gone back and forth about the theater of the mind. Some people really like imagining entire combats, where for some people it's actually kind of tricky to just picture that.
Aphantasia.
What's that?
Aphantasia. It's an actual disorder of my inability from a narrative to visualize, imagine from whole cloth
Yes.
Yeah.
a scene.
It makes reading really boring.
There.
Well, it definitely can be challenging. So it's really important, as a GM, to use other senses, because many of them, that'll be a stronger recall for them and experiencing it. But also having a whiteboard or battle mat and such to show where things are, because always they get lost very quickly when there's complex tactical situations.
Yeah.
And that can be very frustrating. And we know players have quit games because of aphantasia.
I don't know why my mind went directly to smell.
There.
Like, people have to use other senses, and I'm like, yes.
No,
They
but
do
verbally,
have that.
verbally do that.
sulfur.
Describe. As a GM, you come in and it smells of rotten corpses and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That will help them have a more immersive experience. A lot of GMs stick to just visual description.
I thought you were going to be using actual smells.
Well,
like,
people
I
do,
baked some fresh
but you have to
cookies
watch
because
out
we're
for
going to be in a
allergies.
bakery, but I also crapped in the middle of the floor because we're going to be in the sewer.
Scented candles, things like that. It is
Yeah,
a thing.
I've seen it.
But you have
Like
to be
these
careful.
people sell these little scent pods that you can just open up and they're useful and they like.
Yep. But watch out for
the
allergies.
smell of fire. and
Plus,
brimstone and
in
burning
today's society,
flesh.
somebody will just try to vape it.
There. All right, standees for Pathfinder.
That's it. That's everything. 375 pawns for your Pathfinder game. Coming soon. Check it out.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
adventure set. Yeah, even chat was mentioning adventure sets.
Adventure sets, yes.
Sense.
Adventure sense.
He smells like adventure to me.
Adventure.
Pine
If
and
you wanna
blood.
yeah,
Pine
if
and
you want to
blood.
smell
Song,
adventure.
Adventure tends to
Weird Al
stink.
did
Yeah.
teenage
Oh,
spoof. Weird Al did
teenage hormone.
teenage. What smells like teenage?
Smells like Teen Spirit.
Teen
Ah,
Spirit.
Spirit,
Smells like
Spirit,
Teen Spirit.
Spirit,
That was
okay.
the name
Yeah.
of the actual
Weird Al.
song, guys.
Not the
Oh,
actual.
wait.
That's the Weird Al version.
The Weird Al version was called Smells Like Nirvana.
Smells like Nirvana. That's it. Thank you.
Smells Like
like
Teen
Nirvana.
Spirit was the
Actual.
actual song by Nirvana.
okay.
Their
Oh,
first
what's it
hit.
smell? Okay.
Guys, we're in Seattle. Get with the program here.
You're supposed to know this.
Sorry,
Let's
my
not
grunge
bring in
isn't
the
enough.
new year like this.
My grunge isn't enough.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's okay. Apology accepted. We're good. We're good.
I'm not a local.
That's okay. You don't have to be a local to have the experience that you do. And it's topic time. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, the reason why Hawke is, of course, a regular guest because he has a lot of knowledge, specifically with a lot of RPGs and how they benefit in certain ways. And today we're going to be covering how RPGs help in general education. So you wanted to go ahead and expand the theory of why RPGs?
Why? So
RPGs
a
in
lot of
general
people have had
education.
great success using role-playing games to enhance the learning process. And so then you kind of come back to, well, why would that be? And is it provable? And the whole cycle of science and research, and
Right.
then application.
And you've got the
research,
science.
application.
Yeah.
We do all of it, right?
Yeah, that's right. You
Yes.
bring the science.
We do that, and then we do it in the community, and then we observe. We theorized that Star Wars would be a great role-playing game for at-risk populations because of the light side, dark side. Turns out it's not. So we removed it from our tier 1 and 2 games because it was encouraging maladaptive behavior patterns compared to some other game systems.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
It was
everybody-
too cool to
Is
go
it
dark
because Star
side.
Wars fans are so crazy?
It's just there was no discouragement to playing dark side, and then really a lot of encouragement to do that, and so that
Yeah.
led to.
Well, from the players I've heard, is everybody picks Jedi, and then the first thing they go into a cantina, and they're just like, "That guy."
I'm
looked
gonna
at me wrong.
lightsaber
I'm gonna
everybody.
Lightsaber. It's like, no, you
Right.
can't. What?
Yeah,
That's not
and,
how you
and
do
there aren't
it.
any game mechanics. The GM has to intervene through story and stormtroopers and whatever to try to modify behavior, and we just found that problematic.
Yeah.
The other problem is for one shots. The proprietary dice are too slow for people to learn to interpret in one session.
Hey,
Campaign,
man,
it's not a problem.
If you
We
want
love the
somebody to
game.
rail against proprietary dice, I'm your guy.
Yeah, it's great for a campaign. We love it for the campaigns and non-at-risk populations, but for at-risk populations and one-shots, we can't recommend it, so we moved it up the tiers.
Right, but this isn't necessarily just for at-risk. This is general education.
Yeah,
this covers
well,
everybody,
yeah, no,
right?
I was just giving that example. So anyway, in general education, the neuroscience of learning. So remember, neuroscience in general focuses on the typical center of the bell curve.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't cover the outliers so much. That's where you get into abnormal psychology and neuroscience, etc.
Yeah.
That's the outer part. But for the vast majority of people, the ideal way to learn has, in the last 15, 20 years, has been proven over and over and over, and shoots down a lot of the myths about learning. For the majority. Now, we are not talking about
The outliers.
neuroatypical per se. However, we do see that applying a lot of these things actually is helpful with some slight adaptation for neuroatypical populations. So the key things that neuroscience shows is to optimize learning
Yes.
is deep level processing. So getting you to think more deeply about stuff instead of just memorize, spit it out, memorize, spit it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of these are really obvious, like, well, duh.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Triggering why questions, getting you to think about the whys of things happening. If you're learning about history, well, why did this uprising happen and leading to this? You start putting it together. elaboration of those details. So
Why
if
did
you
Russell
come-
Wilson throw instead of just handing the ball off the
but elaboration and distinctiveness where you come in and you describe a room in detail that starts to make it stand out from any other room, right? You come in and it's wood grain panels and ancient books, and you start adding, deep oaken smells and whatever,
Yeah.
all these different things. Now it stands out instead of just saying, well, you enter into a room. You're not going to remember that as well as the one that had the distinctiveness and elaboration.
Yeah, I want
Yes.
to go into the room, not the plain room. I want to go into the deep oaken smells room.
Right, and you create associative learning, and that creates more cues.
Oaken.
Yeah.
So it's the difference between available and accessible.
Yes.
So with a lot of mass learning, you sit there and you memorize it, and then you hopefully hang on to it long enough to take your test, and then it falls away. It's actually still there for quite a while, but becomes less and less accessible. So it's that tip of the tongue thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know this. I can't get to it. It's not accessible right now.
Yeah.
I know it's available. I know this.
Like when you're
but I
trying to
can't-
remember the name of that guy from that one thing.
Oh, that one
Yeah.
thing? Oh,
Yeah, like you know who the actor is in that movie, but you can't remember the name.
yeah.
It's there on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
So the key to that is getting really good cues, memory cues, to help with getting to it when you need it.
Yes.
And so building on prior knowledge. So for example, we have a limit of chunking. There's different theories between 7 plus or minus 2 or 5 plus or minus 2, which means most people can memorize chunks of of information of, let's say, 7 items. Some people can do 9, some people can do 5. So if I say to you CIA, FBI, things like that, each one of those is going to be one chunk. But if I say to you 79T, 257, 362, blah, 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 you don't have any prior knowledge. So each one of those letters and words really becomes separate chunks.
Right.
And so
Okay.
you can't memorize as many.
Yes.
Also, language makes a difference too. If languages have more consonants and such, it can be harder, and that can skew the test. So, building on prior knowledge, because you've heard FBI so many times, that's a single chunk. So,
Yeah.
if you've learned other topics in a game, you know a setting, let's say Neverwinter or something.
Yes.
And you know the area well, and I can just reference a barkeep, and you know that information. And I'm able to link those. I don't have to explain everything about the barkeep, all of that. I can just reference it. That creates some distinctiveness for you. Now, as I give you the new information, you've got a cue to associate it, right? And then the most powerful part is, self-referencing, specific conceptual, contextual meaning,
Yes.
and narrative. And this is how you see these memory championships, where people memorize these insanely long numbers, random card orders. They'll do these
yeah.
5,000 different things. It's incredible, these memory championships. They all do it all through narrative.
I feel really dumb right now, but I don't think I've ever seen a memory championship.
Yeah,
Oh,
they do these
yeah, they do
international
that.
memory championships where they'll lay down a whole
Sounds
bunch of
legit.
random cards. You have to memorize the order. They put them away, and now you have to spit it back. And
okay.
longer and longer sets, or how far out in pi you go, things like that.
Okay.
There's also shows that people do for postal codes. Like you can yell out a place and they'll know automatically what that postal code is.
Code,
is.
Are they
yeah.
generally postmasters? Or?
No,
I mean,
they're just-
sometimes you get savants who people
Yeah.
just have unique abilities, but the way most people do it, that do this professionally, is through narrative. They create a story
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
associated with each part of it.
Like how
and they
I
just
have
recall the story.
all of the Princess Bride memorized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Is it like that?
So these are key things related to role-playing gaming.
Yes.
And in theory, should enhance the learning process because all those things are there. And I've got a few papers out there floating that go into more detail for those who want. You can just look up role-playing games and neuroscience of learning, and you'll find it on academia.edu and elsewhere if you want.
Academia.edu?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Freely available.
Are
So
you-
that's kind of the why. Now we get into, let's look at some specific examples and applications in,
Oh yeah.
in the wild.
So
there.
Okay.
in the wild, this is not just one instance of teachers going ahead and
Oh, yeah.
gamifying their classrooms.
Millions.
There's it's something that's being produced more and more throughout all parts of the world. And these specific ones that have been popping up is this Classcraft, which is a open website you can go to. I think we are posting the link inside chat right now or a little bit before. And basically
it's in there.
It basically is a software solution to gamify what your classes just turn it into a campaign, turns their lesson plans into specific epic quests, and allows students to level up, get gear, and just show off. Basically, it gets them very engaged in the lessons.
This is using token economy techniques. So
Yes.
it's been found to be very effective for learning, whether it's for therapy or just general education, to have token economies where you have a give and take and reward system and reinforcement, etc. And so Classcraft creates a computer web interface to make it easier to manage this kind of token economy and rewards for finishing your assignments and working together, etc. It isn't really a game unto itself.
Yes.
It's a tool set that helps teachers create a fun way to track your grades and your participation, etc.
Yeah, you just look at Minecraft, right? And the obsession that kids get into these games and the constant feedback, small rewards, like, oh, I crafted a blue piece of carpet. And people get so engaged because there's these little drips in there to keep them hooked.
They're actually using Minecraft to teach kids coding during the
Yeah.
summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We were speaking of, earlier about distinctiveness and elaboration. So this is something we were talking about in a previous session where some game systems just give you like treasure points, and that's not very rewarding for people. It's an abstract, and it's like, so what? Why do I care? Whereas game systems that give you 32 gold pieces, a potion of healing, a ring of +1 protection, that's much
That's a
more
good
it's
haul
loot.
right there.
That's loot,
I
right?
know that. If I'm a second level character, that's the best thing I've ever seen.
And that kind of token economy is much more appealing because you've got elaboration and distinctiveness, and it stands out as opposed to just numbers. And they can still represent numbers, and people are going to remember much better, and that'll reinforce the desired learning behavior.
Yeah. And for these kind of styles class, there's like two very well-known leading people. One is a literature teacher called, her name is Sarah Roman, who basically allows these kids to role play as like characters from Beowulf, the Canterbury Tales as well.
Awesome,
Yeah. And then also another one is Cade Wells, who I believe he's more of a sociology teacher, and he uses it as like, you get health potions and quizzes are boss battles, and it's just like basically his whole lessons plan is another session after another session of these like various games. So it's from beginning to end. So they're two different distinct teaching styles here. I'm sorry if I'm jumping a lot.
No, that would be really fun, depending on like what book you were studying at the time. Like the Scarlet Letter would probably not be very enjoyable.
Yeah, depending.
Now you're dead, or you're just sad.
Yeah, dead or sad.
We're reading Old Yeller this week. Who wants to roleplay shooting the dog?
Well, it's very interesting. I imagine that, because I've looked at this and I said, like, I think a lot of the education I went through was very boring, and I don't remember a lot from my education. It's like, oh, if they had only done more interesting things, I think you have to do it very carefully.
Yes.
I think gamification in education has been a bad word for a long time because it's easy to spend a lot of effort.
It goes through cycles.
Yes.
So
It
back
does.
in the late 70s and early 80s, before the anti-gaming stigma of the 80s, you saw all over, I've got old newspaper clippings and such, they're hard to find on the web, but
Yes.
we have access to those kinds of archives, of schools all over the world using Dungeons and Dragons specifically in their classes. I was in 1985 at a school for gifted and talented children, high school, teaching 5 days a week as a class in class role-playing games. I used multiple games and such at the time.
Yes.
And all of the associative learning with that, with math and literature and reading comprehension and vocabulary and spelling and world and geography and history, all these things that came with it. So back in the early 70s, or late 70s, early 80s,
Yes.
it was very popular and common. Then after 1982-83, the media started the
The
whole
Satanic
hype about
Panic,
it.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Satanic Panic.
You literally you would see photos of these D&D clubs where there'd be like 90 kids. Then the next year, 30 kids.
Yeah.
Then by 85, 86, there'd be a handful, and then they're gone by 87.
Yes.
And that happened in the schools. The schools were accepting gamified, full role-playing game learning experiences from the teachers, and they killed them all. In Canada, the U.S., England, France, all of them were gone by the
Well,
late
I mean,
80s.
it's a good thing they did, or the devil could have gotten them.
Right, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Why do we destroy everything we love?
So we're full circle here where
Because
it's just starting
Satan.
to come back up.
Yeah, it's just coming. I think like even it mentioned like they mentioned that WotC is very supportive of this, and they have given these educational programs free access to these 5th edition books.
Of course they're supportive. It's a whole other market they can break into.
Yeah.
Because they're smart
That's
about
money.
that. Yeah.
The same
Yeah,
reason that Apple gives computers to all the
Yeah,
schools,
it's just like,
right?
hey,
So
all
they
right,
can
now you
train
guys know how to
them.
use
You
Apple.
must get to the children first.
Yeah, that's just good marketing.
Yeah, but in this case, with the role-playing games,
Yes.
there's a lot of benefits
Right.
Yeah.
to the students.
Well, and as we elaborated there, You had some specific examples that you wanted to.
So for if you wanted to go ahead and look up what are like specific examples that we're looking at, we have about Teaching with D&D is the main website that you want to go ahead. Other than of course Classcraft. We also have like various like different links relating specifically to the Sarah Roman and Cade Wade's case. Teaching with D&D is the Cade Wade.
Cade Wells.
Cade Wells. And the 8th grade, so another one is that they did for teaching wise. Sorry, I'm just getting my brain's a little.
It's okay. I'm thinking about what a cool name Cade Wade is now.
But yeah, there's another
Totally
one
named the
where
character
an 8th grade science teacher, this one is specifically kind of a little bit more interesting because trying to remember what his name is, Scott Herbert is actually a teacher, speaking of the Satanic Panic, in a Catholic school, and that it is being approved of to like use these RPGs or RPGs light.
I had less trouble in
A
Catholic
lot of that is
schools,
we have a
though,
significantly
than
less
others.
stupid pope than we've had in the past.
But I didn't actually, during the panic, I actually had less trouble in the Catholic schools than I did in the public schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were allowed
It
to
was
play whatever we
weird.
wanted in
Yeah,
the Catholic
it
schools.
wasn't a big
Went
deal.
to public school,
Yeah.
no.
Yep. You couldn't even
Not a
do it
thing.
after school or anything. You could not.
Yeah,
be on
the
property.
Catholics didn't cause the Satanic
No.
Panic. That wasn't really their jam.
It was.
That was,
it was Dr. Now I'm going to blank on him. It was Patricia
tell.
Poling from Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, and Dr. Thomas. Oh, now I'm blanking on it.
It's okay. We are all
Dr.
just
Thomas went to a Christian
Who
college,
is now
so
in
it doesn't
prison
count.
as of a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
PhD, and he is now in prison for trading prescriptions for sex and such.
Oh.
But he was.
Wait,
he
you
was
can do that?
Whoa, what?
I've got some
Yeah.
antibiotics I'm not
And
using.
he had his license revoked multiple times, and he created the National Council Against Television Violence, and he partnered with BAD. And it was those two individuals who lobbied Congress for the bans.
Plus,
and went to-
televangelists jumped right onto it, too.
Well, everybody, the media, everybody was guilty. 2020, they were all guilty of that during the 80s and 90s.
So yeah.
I remember 700
Luckily,
Club
it's
did a
getting
whole
undone.
piece
They
on it
still
back
are.
in the
They
day.
still do.
you know,
Every
like-
2 years, they bring that up.
Yeah, but for this specific aspect, Scott Herbert basically turned his whole 8th grade class from beginning to finish as a RPG game. So like the decorations and everything around it is RPG based. You earn experience to get a better grade. So that's how it ends up working. So there is a little bit of more competitiveness in terms of you want to get more experience. You can be the top warrior, the top player, you know? And
Jack Chick was mentioned, the famous Chick track.
Yeah.
Dark
Yeah,
Dungeons.
but that all came later.
Yeah.
That was
That
just
was-
added to it.
That was
yeah.
added. That was what 1983 is when that came out.
Right, but yeah, I mean, they started handing out the chick tracks, but it was the other people who really got it into Congress and the public schools and police.
It's just you
training
can't
police,
think about the
etc.
Satanic Panic as
Right,
a gamer
without
without thinking
Dark
of Jack
Dungeons.
Chick.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So-
indeed.
yeah.
Some others to mention, roleplay workshops. So Rebecca, it's roleplayworkshop.com, who's based out of Oakland. She was, she had a background in science and everything, but she was a certified instructor in California's school system back in the late 80s. She started introducing role-playing gaming after school. That was working so well, she started to bring it in school, and she noticed that that was more effective than any other technique she was using to teach the topics. The kids who did that were scoring so much better than the kids who didn't participate because it was elective. She eventually quit as a teacher and opened up her own workshops, and now has the Roleplay Workshop ever since. Over 30 years now. She employs game masters and such. She ended up creating, later we can bring that up, her own game system called Abante because of her background with the Philippines and everything.
Yeah.
And is continuing to do that. That's out of Oakland, California, and uses that to teach all kinds of topics. Denmark, Ostrakov Efterskole, teaches the last couple of years of high school all through LARP, live action role playing.
yeah.
They teach 3 languages, math, science, history, all of it. And so one of the examples they gave is when I was talking to them, at the beginning of the school year, they all get together and they try to come up with a theme. And one of the examples was a cruise ship.
Yes.
And they're all going to play the different roles. I think we talked about this previously. And then everybody gets the roles and they start to figure out plotting the maps and resource allocation and political stuff and linguistic challenges, all the things. They tie that in with the learning process. And this is part of the public school system in Denmark. You know, it's alternative learning, but it's still a public school system.
Yeah.
And these kids score way better than the general populace there because of these programs.
Yeah.
So one of many different ways to apply this.
Yeah. very different like ways.
I'm picturing PE is a very interesting class.
Yeah.
Like today we're gonna learn how to use a Morning Star. Okay, after we're done with our laps.
I mean, I would have enjoyed that class. Can you imagine, like, speaking about like gamifying things, can you imagine a whole school system that embraces this gamifying, and that you do have these people that like essentially go to Hogwarts in a sense?
Yeah.
That you have these like very different classes, and you do have like PE is going to be like throwing fireballs.
See, I would be worried about giving them unrealistic expectations for jobs
About
afterwards.
jobs?
I guess.
PBS, he's like, mace swinging, it's a valuable skill.
Builds upper body strength.
Well, that begs the question.
Don't put it on your resume.
You know, maybe this is something that jobs should start to look at as well. For
So on my LLC
As a teacher,
side,
as a teacher, I've always used role playing in the classroom.
Yeah.
But I teach theater.
yes. So I have, there's the nonprofit RPG research, then we have the for-profit RPG therapeutics.
Yes.
So we have done all kinds of retreats and professional training for entrepreneurs, for executives. We do these programs, and they're all role-playing game related to build up a team, right? All that team building and all that complex learning that you need. So that's actually fairly common in the executive world.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
use role-playing and role-playing games.
Well, if there's a team of us
for
working
learning.
on a project, I do want to know which one of us is the tank.
Oh,
Well, there is. I mean, if you
Yes.
go back
I
historically,
already knew it was you, Banzai.
in education, for a long
Emma's the
time,
healer.
oh yeah.
the idea was that education shouldn't be fun. It should be punishment. It shouldn't feel good. You know, you have
Wrong, do it again. Whack.
Yeah, take
if you
your
don't eat
medicine.
your meat, how can you have any pudding?
and because that's how
But
they
if
were
they do the whack and you
expecting
can parry, that's role playing.
adult life afterwards to be as well. For like, it's just gonna be take your medicine, right? So your whole life of taking your medicine, and maybe we can have a more enlightened
Needs to be
perspective on
balanced.
life.
Yeah, and it has to be a work ethic and such.
Yeah.
That's you can't
So we're
take it
treating
too
the
far.
RPG in the classrooms as the spoonful of sugar that helps
Helps
the medicine go
go
down.
down.
Sorry, I went to Disneyland this week.
Dr. Thomas Radecki was the name I was blanking on, by the way, who went
Great.
to prison.
Thomas
and everything.
Radecki?
Yes.
Sounds like a stand-up dude.
I mean, with that in mind, there is those like how I mentioned. There's these two classes or separate groups of people with the educational system. People who like Scott Herbert, who gamify it from start to finish because RPGs can take some time to settle in, to
Yes.
learn, to develop. And then there's people also like the Sarah Roman, who does these one-shots of like the literature tells. So what like there's that argument of should we make it totally integrated from start to finish versus these one-shots that kids can pick up, like, oh man, I come back home, guess what, we role played like what it was like to live in the Victorian era or something like that. So
I have a. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
I have a study in the works through East Washington University on role-playing games for education in the constraints of university setting. So we've talked about how early on the majority of studies were done on college students, and then in more recent years they've started to look at younger ones. It's just legally safer and easier
work
to
with
study
adults?
college students. Well, not
Imagine-
just adults. College students sign away a lot of rights.
Yeah.
And they are the most researched for psychology and
You
everything.
give me 20 bucks in
population.
quarters, and I will sell my soul
Yeah.
as a college
But
student.
but the problem, but this also being a
If we give you
problem.
20
with
bucks in
research.
dollar bills, you won't use it to pay off your student loans, though. What's up with that?
Honestly, I was working for pizza. I was like, you feed me, I will.
Yes,
Banzai, I still work for pizza.
stick electrodes to my head, do whatever you want.
Right. Well, and so
Yeah.
this is actually kind of a problem in that the vast majority of research that gets published is university populations,
Yes. Yeah.
which is a subset of, compared to the rest
Of
of the
the
world.
education
Yes. Yeah.
system,
It's just
certainly.
compared to the whole world. So, but at least it's something. But so the initial studies in the 80s and 90s and such, the vast majority were college, young adult.
Yes.
In more recent years, we've seen where people have taken the chance and the money to do more studies with younger populations, very young populations. We worked with as young as 2.5-year-old nonverbal autism spectrum and such with some of our programs through the university and elsewhere. And so we're seeing in the last just 5-10 years exponential growth on information about these younger populations
Yes.
and the efficacy of these. And I think you had a little quick bullet list of some of the things that all the different people's feedback.
Oh yes. So I guess what really to bring like this whole thought of education with like gamifying it. There are some like I can see some people already bringing like to the discussion. It hasn't like it's been very well received. Like throughout what we've seen, it's been very well received. But people do see problems in the future of people playing with cards and dice. They're distractions.
Right.
And is there a different way to go about it? Is RPGs themselves a little too hard? Do we need to make a rules light system? And then also like between, there's so many systems and settings, like what actually works for people, especially depending on educational systems. Some people come from different backgrounds.
I've heard that.
Language barriers.
Language
cultural
barriers.
barriers.
Cultural barriers.
So we're recently working
Economic barriers.
Yeah.
We'll just
but
say
we're
it.
working, but I
Economic
mean
barriers.
cultural barriers even more. So we recently have been doing more work with the various tribes in the Northwest. We've got an advocate for us who's a vocational therapist who works with all the tribes throughout the U.S. Cherokee and Spokane and a bunch of them, and he's been starting to send us people.
Yes.
But he doesn't want us to go and train them at their go to the town and such and train Native Americans. That's the white guy coming in mission, right? Missionary. That's got problems. So they're sending us to our normal volunteer training programs for them to train, and then they will go and they're taking it to their population to go ahead and put their own spin on it.
It's a very sensitive way to handle
work
that.
through
like
these
that.
cultural challenges, which we're really excited to see this starting to spread through different Native American tribes. You were asking a little bit about which systems and settings should apply.
Yes.
And of course, I'm going to give you the generic, safe science response of, well, it depends
Yes.
on the population, the topic, the classroom size, the time constraints, the budget, skill sets,
Yes,
etc.
I was really worried we'd get a straight answer.
I can give you some, though. So I can give you some examples, but just realize this is just a small snippet of a much broader thing. So for more effective development, and we've done this through trial and error and such on our own, and we see other research out there that supports this. If you're trying to target development of knowledge, skills, and application in math, language, reading, literature, reading comprehension, science, we see that the old school, more crunchy games are more effective than the newer lightweight systems.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it makes sense. A lot of the lighter weight systems don't have much math.
Okay.
They don't have you do as much of that technical problem solving. They tend to have, my wife's a technical writer and everything, and we both rail about the dumbing down of the literary capacity of America and everything.
Yeah.
And what do they have you down to now to 6th grade or something for your technical manuals? 8th grade.
Hey,
Used to
that's
be
all
you were
right.
shooting for like 12th grade.
Yeah.
And it keeps going, and then it was 9th grade, and now it's 8th grade, and so they keep lowering the bar.
Soon it's just going to be pictures.
Yes, well, yes.
But not complicated
Graphic
ones.
novels.
Emojis, entire
Right.
conversations in emojis.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So what happens is you don't raise up the participants as high as you used to with these other systems. Now, if those skills are not what you're targeting, then that's less of an issue. So games for that goal that would be appropriate might be Rollmaster, Hero, GURPS, things like that. because they're
Point-based
gonna have more
systems.
of that.
Point-based.
What's that?
Point-based systems.
Yeah, they're going to do more math. They also tended to have a higher writing style, educational writing style. They were not less accessible to 8-year-olds and more accessible to 12-year-olds, for example.
Okay.
And not accessible to everybody because they might be really long sentences, et cetera. So you have to maintain more in your memory queue when you have longer sentences than you get very short sentences. Whereas a lot of lightweight systems, they use very short, monosyllabic words, et cetera. And so they're more accessible to a younger population, but they won't raise up that area. However, if you're focusing more on whether it's the social skills and such, but let's say you're trying to focus more on the history
Yes.
of something or the cultural interaction, or even just learning a new language. There's multiple studies on using role-playing games to teach language because the best way to learn language is what?
Practice.
Just practice.
Immersion.
Yeah.
Immersion and just
Yeah,
kicking
and then
yourself
practice.
off.
Yeah, then immersion.
I feel like I failed the quiz.
Repetition,
Darn it.
repetition. Darn
Yeah,
it.
certainly repetition.
I'd like to change my answer to
No
immersion.
health potion for you.
And like when I was studying Russian in high school, he was trained for the military. We had to learn Cyrillics and very basic phrases, and then we were no longer allowed to speak English after 2 weeks into the class. For the rest of the year, we came in that room every morning, and everything, all the posters were all in Russian and everything, and we had to ask, how do we say, how do we say, how do
So
we
you
say?
start off with like the basics, like where's the bathroom? You know,
You learn all that
hello,
later.
how are you? My
You just
name
had to
is.
learn,
Where
yeah.
is the microfilm?
They don't teach you where's the bathroom. 'Cause they want
every-
to make you desperate. They
But
want to
every
give you
question,
motivation.
every question you don't answer, I cut off a finger. Yours
Yeah.
or mine? You know.
Yeah. All right, so we should probably get ready to wrap this up because
So-
we're getting closer.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
let's go through this list real quick before we do.
Lightweight systems that are good for a lot of these other goals.
Yes.
Yeah.
BFRPG, it's just so accessible.
And that's
on
the
so many
basic
levels.
fantasy role-playing game system. That's the
BasicFantasy.org.
one that you were talking about earlier. That's the $6 core book.
Freely available PDFs, all of them, and then the printed books are $3 to $6 each.
Okay.
Very nice.
Fate and Fate Accelerated, very lightweight systems, a lot of fun, superheroes, etc.
We love some Fate here.
Evil Hat Productions, they do some great material there.
Yes, they do.
No Thank You Evil.
Ah,
for
by
5
Charlotte
to
Germain, man.
12-year-olds.
That's one of my favorite games ever. My
awesome.
nieces and nephews love that game.
And you can wrap up an entire adventure in 30 minutes.
Easily.
Oh, nice.
Right, and get the whole thing and teach things. We teach kids like we do the bee dance. And all. So we teach kids about how bees communicate, and so you can integrate all kinds of science and other knowledge where you're not worried about the math and the literature part. You're trying to teach other conceptual things, and you don't want them
And plus-
interfered with by too much technical.
And the basics of that math stuff is all there too. Like
Right.
it really
It's
gives you
a
the
stepping
flavor of
stone.
really playing a role-playing game. I am a big advocate for that one.
At more junior high level, and we don't recommend this for younger if you're going to play it as is, but Bubble Gum Shoe.
Yeah.
This is Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, modern day. They have topics in there like addressing pretty heavy topics like teenage sex and rape and things like that.
Oh, wow.
In the junior high school environment. A lot of the social issues of who is spreading bad rumors about the prom queen, things like that. So it's really targeting these things, but you're doing it in a whodunit way.
Yes.
With the gumshoe system, which is a fairly lightweight system, and so very fascinating there. And then one of our favorites for science and history, Doctor Who, Adventures
Yeah.
in Time and Space.
Yeah.
That's what the TV series was created for.
Right.
That was their
Yes.
whole pitch to the BBC was, we want to teach them science and history through a story that they will find interesting and fun. And
About a
Grates
cool
does it
alien who
beautifully.
doesn't
Yeah.
kill people.
Yeah, and yeah,
Surprise, surprise.
violence as a last resort rather than first resort, etc. Because at the time, 1950s, they were
You
there
just
were a lot
shoot
more
people
World
back
War-
then.
World
That's
War
fine.
II, right?
Hey, look, you're a bad guy. Bang.
Yeah.
Done.
So those are some,
Problem
those,
solved.
Those have some great results and have helped a lot. Any last tidbits we wanted to get in there?
Well,
I don't know if you want to do it now, but you want to have some shout
yeah,
outs.
you gotta go.
Yeah.
Oh yes, so
Let's get your
we
shout-outs in.
are. Some other systems I want to mention. There's a Shakespeare role-playing game that's freely available. That's really great. If
What's
you
it
wanna-
called?
I'm trying to find the name because it changed, and so look for Shakespeare role-playing game free.
Okay.
Okay.
But it was all freely available.
Google it.
And yeah. Then also, another great resource is Sarah Lynn Bowman, who's a professor out of Texas.
Yes.
She has her book on the functions of role-playing gaming. That's like core literature for anybody who's interested in this topic. So meanwhile, we are re-expanding back throughout the Northwest now that we've broken over. We're at 106 volunteers now.
nice.
So 2 years ago we had 10. This
Oh.
rate will have 1,000 in 2 more years.
All right.
Sustain this growth.
That's what you want.
That's what
So in the Seattle area, we are trying to find a community center that is interested in partnering with us to do our drop-in and role-playing game programs. Now they need to not have any barriers to entry, so no membership fees like the Y and such. These should be freely available for people to just drop in. It should not be an existing geek culture game store type environment because that's preaching to the choir. We want to go to community centers where the people aren't gamers and expose them to it for the first time in a safe community environment. So if anybody has some suggestions for that, please email info@rpgresearch.com. I'm going to be in town all this week checking out locations with Joe and others trying to find a good spot. And then we're going to start up our drop-in RPGs that I discontinued back in 2014. And of course, we're always looking for volunteers.
Yes.
So rpgresearch.com/volunteer. We have a lot of different roles. We desperately need a volunteer coordinator because we're growing so fast, and an administrative assistant as volunteers. And of course, we're planning to go to Gen Con. We still have to officially get approval, but we are planning to run accessible and other tables
Yes.
at Gen Con. We need 20 game masters, and you need to attend training once a week. You can do it remotely, and you need to be able to get yourself to Indianapolis during Gen Con the last few days of July and first few days of August.
Yes.
So we're trying to fill that gap, and so check it out, sign up, get some training, and you can help us help others
Okay.
through these programs.
Right on. So yes, if you are in the Pacific Northwest area, please check out the RPG, like basically rpgresearch.com.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry, I was like trying to remember.
Yeah.
Well, folks, Banzai Hawke, thank you for the topic today.
Yeah.
General education, role-playing, I think we covered a lot in the short amount of time that we were able to do it, and I
Yes.
obviously can't wait to have you back next time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, once a month right now.
Once a
Yeah,
month.
every
First
time
Friday
every
of each
time you're
month.
on, I think everybody learns something.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
And it's slowly but surely we're going to catch on to this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really
Yeah, well,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for being
Yeah,
here.
no,
So that was it for the topics. Now let's move on to something a little lighter.
Yeah.
Bundles.
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 Bundles of joy.
Lord of the Rings 5th Edition, Adventures in Middle-earth for the Humble Bundle this week. It ends in 11 days, so pick it up while you can. It's basically your last chance to get these particular products before that they are no longer available. The
Or not.
Or
No,
not.
not.
Depending, that's a separate story that we
Yeah.
will cover. But Cubicle 7 does not have the license to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
The name of the company that does is
Sophisticated Games.
Sophisticated
Cubicle
Games.
7 is discontinuing publication of the One Ring role-playing game and Adventures in Middle-earth. However, Sophisticated Games is actually the licensee who was having Cubicle 7 do the publishing.
Right. So this is your last chance to get the Cubicle 7 version
Yeah.
of
Yes.
any of these games.
And they've already pretty much sold out the physical books. They've all
Yeah.
but sold out already once
Yeah,
we've got
so
it.
grab that
wow.
Humble Bundle while you can. It's going to
This
be a
is
great
PDFs,
deal. It's
yeah.
everything you need for a total conversion of your D&D 5th Edition game into Middle-earth. With it's got player guides, DM guides, region guides, adventure modules, the whole nine. If you
And
want to
they're really
play
well done.
a story that has already been told 1,000 times, this is your chance to do it.
Yeah, and there is some confusion.
Some people
The-
want that.
The One
I
Ring
know.
Role- yeah, the One Ring role-playing game is its own system, and it's a wonderful system. We think it's one of the best systems for the populations we
Right,
work
and
with.
this is not that.
The Adventures in Middle-earth is Tor adapted to D&D.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And very well done. And it is a nice step up from straight D&D. So a lot of stuff you're talking about in Pathfinder, that's in AIM.
Yeah.
All that cultural background and connection is part of the character development. That is a little lighter in 5th edition. They really enhanced that
Yeah.
with AIM.
I've taken a look at that game, and it's
it's really
everything
great.
it says it is. I've never gotten to play it, though.
Beautifully done.
And this one benefits world builders.
Yes, World Builders, a nonprofit organization founded by the New York Times bestselling author Patrick Rothfuss, my favorite writer, who I'm still scared to talk to when I meet him. Like I shake, it's the worst. I feel like such a dork every single time.
You fangirl.
And I don't fangirl. Like I'm really good about not doing it.
But
but
internally.
man, every time I see that guy, I'm just like. I'll get over it eventually. It's fine. But it supports his favorite charity, Heifer International. Bundle of Holding has two different bundles. I said bumbles.
Bumbles.
Mr. Bumbles. With mapping software and maps from Pro Fantasy Software. If you're a big fan of building your own maps for online play or just world building, these are good
I
resources
have
for
that
you.
full bundle. It's called the whole shebang.
Yeah.
It's campaign cartographer, dungeon builder, all of that.
This comes with City Designer
powerful. Yep.
and what?
Cartographer.
And campaign cartographer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it ends today. So if you're going to look at that, at least go look at it now
This is
after
CAD
this show is over.
This is CAD-based mapping software, so there's a bit of a learning curve, but
Oh,
it's
yeah, CAD.
really powerful.
But if you ever want to
Yeah.
like become an engineer, you know,
Well,
you don't
no,
have
yeah.
to learn it
You
anyway.
don't have
right?
to go that
Skills,
far.
that's-
Well, and this
Yeah,
benefits
beautiful maps.
the Water Foundation. So if you want to just give water to people who don't have water,
Pretty important.
Yeah, pretty
Basic
important.
human need.
you know.
Yep, a problem
Huge
all
issue in
over the
India
world
and Africa.
and Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Flint,
Still.
yes.
Still.
Yep.
Why?
Don't know.
But that's it for our bundles. That covers everything. We got Middle-earth in 5th edition and some really great mapping software. Check it out while you can. That's Humble Bundle and Bundle of Holding. Bundle of Holding ends today. Humble Bundle ends in 11 days.
Just a bunch of bundles of joy.
Check them out. Kickstarter!
It's the Kickstarter court.
Kickstarter
We
court.
kicked out
All
the
right.
queen
Ah, yes, Kickstarter court.
because the queen is gone.
We're
Light
all-
side representation,
We're all the queen today.
dark side
Side
representation. All right, here we go.
There you
All right,
go.
first up we have Mikelings,
Mm-hmm.
Mycanoids,
Mushrooms.
siege-themed Myconid miniatures. And as everyone knows, Myconids is mushroom people.
Uh-huh.
This is common knowledge because they are great and adorable and very unique characters. I don't know exactly what you would use these for unless you're doing like a Myconid-themed role-playing game campaign, perhaps.
I
But
was
they
thinking
are
about doing
adorable.
I was thinking about doing a
Expedition to the Barrier
D&D
Peaks.
adventure set in Super Mario Land.
Okay, yeah.
This
That's-
would be good for that.
With horror mushrooms.
Yes.
I mean, some of these are pretty freaky looking.
You don't think Goombas are scary?
Goombas? Yeah, they're not bad. But they're better than the Mushroom Kingdom people. Those are just funguses growing on their head that's controlling what they think.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, what? I thought those were hats.
No, they're mind control.
They're a
mind
separate
control.
entity. That
Princess Peach is a
Is
terrible
there anything
dictator.
before Expedition to the Barrier Peaks that did this with the whole, or was it that one? Or no, it was one of those first edition ones where they introduced the whole Myconid populace and everything.
Yeah, I don't remember which
I can't
one it
remember
was.
which one it was, if there was anything before that, or if any books it came from.
My GM was scared of mushrooms, so.
There.
but they're
That
delicious.
was the veggie pygmies, but there was also, there was one of these.
It's accurate
Lost Cabbages Johnstown.
for these. If you look at the pictures of these, some of them are pretty freaky looking. And that's Mykelings, Mykelings. If you're looking that up, Mykelings 5. So they've done 4 of these campaigns before. It's got 2 days left, and these are resin cast minis with a starter set and all sorts of different models. And there's a lot of different stuff. This is definitely one of those bag of minis campaigns. So if you just really love mushrooms and you want them to be everywhere in your house, then
Dude,
yeah.
shrooms.
Shrooms, man. Like
Back this Kickstarter.
Great, we're all 12 still. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay.
But yes. And the next.
So next up,
Guess what?
next up we got, I like products that do exactly what they say they do.
What it says on the tin.
Yeah,
It says
if it says it on the tin or if it says it on the Kickstarter, man, there's nothing better to me than a description that just says 3 words.
So,
And that's what it does.
Warning, warning.
Warning for
Language warning.
Yeah, no,
Mature
hey,
content.
no,
Yeah.
it's the name of a product. We can say it.
Yes,
the
the
Fuck
next 2.
D6s are here, folks. The Kickstarter for these only has 5 days left, and what it is a professionally manufactured dice with the word fuck instead of the number 1. So if you can't actually count to 6,
1.
1. You mean just 1. Yeah.
right? If you can't actually count down from 6, how about that? 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, fuck. That's how it goes with these dice, people. There you go. They do exactly what they say they do, which
Yep.
is say fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations. If you need those dice, they're
Yeah.
there for you
There
for the
you
next
go.
5 days. Go ahead and pre-order those because I know you're just jumping on them right now.
Yeah. Once again, fulfilling the prophecy of for every need, and most things that there isn't even a need, they're going to create a product.
There is
Yes.
literally no need for dice that say fuck on them, except for to give me the opportunity to say it on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they do have the confetti that you can give to people.
Well, they've fulfilled their purpose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For
Yeah.
you, being able to say.
Anyway,
yeah.
these are some nice effing dice. Check them out.
All right, up
Well,
next.
there's research about how if you can use certain expletives, it lowers your stress levels and such, cortisol levels.
There you go.
Do you feel
And
better?
so that'll help you.
I felt great when I came here.
Ah. So now you.
Now I just still feel good, but I've also said fuck 4 times 5.
All right, up next we have the Unsettled board game. This is a sandbox survival game set in the bizarre and wondrous reaches of deep space. This is a 2 to 4 player cooperative game. And unlike a lot of these games, it's not about combat. So you're in space, you're in deep, weird space, messing around, trying to survive, as is.
But not trying to survive without combat. So just trying to survive in space.
Yes.
Space.
Which is, I mean,
Space without
is,
combat is just a scary place. Yeah.
So, I mean, because with combat, it's like you have some control, you're shooting things, whatever. It's kind of, there's a lot of games that do that. But this one
The
in
only thing you
particular.
can't really do is eject.
Right, yeah. I mean, unless you have a spacesuit on, a little jetpack, or unless you're strong with a force.
Oh.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Gosh,
I'm
they
not.
should have done that better. I'm sorry. Nothing. Nothing.
Stop complaining about Star Wars. You're not a writer.
This, So there's a lot of interesting things in this game. We've talked about a lot of space exploration, space survival games. It feels like there's a new one out on Kickstarter pretty much every week.
All the time.
But this one, it's more about, as opposed to being a bunch of campaigns that you're working through or one long campaign, it's a bunch of standalone games. So the base comes with 4 planets, and each one is a game. So if you really like the planet Mykonos or whatever it's called, you can just keep playing there and keep going through the different situations. Supposedly it's supposed to have a lot of replay value just based off of the abilities that your characters have and the events that come up, and there's limited time opportunities. So the way the word picture they're painting of this, that it's very intense, it's very interactive, like you have to work together not just like a cooperative game where there's a quarterback and we all do our things, but there's hidden roles and a lot of stuff, interesting stuff going on. with this game.
And maybe part of this trend, you know how the new Space Force has been formed in the United States, right? Just a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
The actual
thank God.
United States Space Force.
Nice.
Because before it was a branch of the Air Force, et cetera. Now it's its own thing. And it's just interesting you're talking about how there's been all of these space survival games. So,
Yeah,
Now, this is normally the part where I get up and walk away.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm
Space
attached to a microphone right now, so I'm going to stay right here and complain.
So there's 5 days left on this Kickstarter. It also has an adorable research robot. So what more could you want?
Ooh, adorable research
But
robot.
you-
You know
yeah,
what?
I don't think I was sold until you said robot. Tell me
Yeah,
about robot.
adorable research robot. Of course, because you're trying to survive in space, you have this robot who's helping you.
Danger, Will
totally not going to try and kill you at
boy,
some
they
point. 'Cause
changed
it's
that with
adorable.
the new series.
Right, okay, yeah, adorable
Yeah.
things never try to kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Netflix.
Gremlins.
Yeah.
Gremlins 2.
Yep. It's a great Christmas movie. Anywho, moving on. Do you want to play a topical game that is very recent to current political
That
happenings?
depends. When you say topical, do you mean I rub it on my skin?
Oh, wait, did I use the wrong word again?
No, it's the right word. It's just
Oh.
used in two different ways. I'm sorry.
Context. I
That
was
was
like,
confusing.
wait. I was like, gosh darn it. Did I use the wrong word? Did I say something bad again?
Yeah.
No, I tricked you. I apologize.
No, it's okay. So basically, this new Kickstarter game that has 5 days left is called Hong Kong Summer of 2019. If you guys are current with recent ongoing news, Hong Kong is still very much fighting for its own independence.
Act as the protesters and save the city.
Yep, act as the protesters and save the city. This is a deck building game. You go ahead and you go ahead and play as protesters who are trying to batten away all of the smoke bombs and great stuff happening.
But it also has minis.
It does have minis.
And settings.
So you do have to, you basically place where your people are defensive-wise and how they're going to initiate, attacks and such.
Attacks?
Or special. They said attacks. They
I
said
see.
attacks.
I don't know if a protest game should be.
If it
Or
said
defend,
that,
yeah. Well,
I
the
mean,
waves.
yeah.
This is what it comes down to we've talked before on the show about how soon is too soon for political events. And it can
Yeah.
go on either side, right? It can be.
This one's not even over yet, though.
no,
I
it's
know,
not.
yes.
It's current.
I think that actually is the definition of too soon.
But it could be, when people do Kickstarters for current games like this, usually their pitch is this game will raise awareness. By playing through the events, you'll feel them more and you'll be more in tune
But
with
what if
current
this game is
events.
just a fancy collector's item commemorating when a whole bunch of people got murdered by their government?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which could still happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Tiananmen Square.
there's
Oh.
definitely treading
that one's
a
bad, yeah.
thin line here.
Yeah, it really definitely is. But if it's a topic that you're interested in and want to play a casual game about it, go right ahead.
Go
It's
ahead.
on Kickstarter right now for the next 5 days.
Yeah, but besides that, it's more like the whole this mostly should be just protesting. Never mind, it's a whole different can of worms we're not going to open.
Tying with education, though,
It's
if
making
you
a game
have,
out of something topical.
if you are in a sociology as opposed to social psychology course and
Yes.
modern events course or politics course, college level probably or high school.
Yeah,
at least,
college.
This might be interesting for a teacher to check out and see to give people some context about.
But is
why
it in
that
good
is
taste,
going
I
on.
guess, is the
No,
question.
Yeah.
Like,
you'd have to play
we're
test
really
it and
one
see.
bad day away from it being in very poor taste.
Yes.
Right.
So,
Well, you know what's exciting? You want to know what's exciting? Wood. Wood is
Wood is great.
okay,
is-
there
what
we go.
is-
I just swallowed all 6 dirty jokes I thought about that.
I'm sorry, I was trying to do a nice segue into these
That was a-
Celtic laser
Banzai
dice.
is a woodworker.
I'm
so
a woodworker. This is a bunch of hardwood dice that are.
All right, I just swallowed all 4 dirty jokes I thought about that.
It's okay. You know what? This is just really pretty dice. You like dice that are made out of really pretty things that are laser etched.
So these are the dragon and Celtic
Yes,
laser dice?
Dragon and Celtic laser dice. They are made out of exotic hardwood using laser technology, and it
Says they have a hand-rubbed finished. Hawk, don't.
I think if you just go and look at this Kickstarter, there's
Yes.
some
They're beautiful.
really
They're beautiful.
cool
They're
designs
really
on
actually
here.
really beautiful, and from a woodworker's perspective, I get it.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I'm like, how do you know these don't have burrs in them and make it
Yeah,
a
balance.
little?
Yeah, how's the balance?
How's
the balance
the
is not
balance?
good. I have some.
Wood,
feel
wood
like
dice
this
are
is-
wood
I do
dice
have
are
wooden
very
dice.
dicey in that respect and
Yeah.
always have
Yeah.
been.
They're
but
much more just for appreciation visually. They're not
Yeah, and
And they
then
don't hold
over
up well
time,
either,
even
they
if
wear
it's a
out.
hard
No,
wood.
but these you can roll, you can play with them. The problem with these is that people think you can't play with these dice just because they're not perfect. And I'm so sick of that mentality.
How
Like, you don't have to have perfect dice.
Yeah.
They don't make that big a difference.
But from a woodworker's perspective.
You still have basically a 1 in 10 chance to get a particular number on a D10.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is here, again, you're not gambling, you know, for the most part, you're not staking money on this. You're just trying to have an interesting game experience. And it's almost more thematic if you have the D10 or whatever that always goes towards the 1.
Yeah,
you know, like that's
I'll
kind
avoid
of
a
an
statistics
interesting.
argument with you. Then.
Weird side. Like, they're pretty. They
Yeah,
are pretty.
love the
I
appearance
I
of
like it with the
I'm not
exotic.
even okay with digital randomizers because they're not truly random and such. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing from
Well, then, you see, that's called being nitpicky.
right, from a gameplay perspective.
Suck it up and play the game, Hawk.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
yes.
so this has 7 days left.
7 days left. Dragon and Celtic laser dice. You should just check it out.
And
They're beautiful.
they really are gorgeous. If you're
They are.
into dice and you're a dice collector, this is probably something you're going to like a lot, and a lot of you are out there are. So,
But yes. And then I believe the final and last Kickstarter we have with 7 days left is GTG Minis for Tabletop RPGs. This is basically, you want to go ahead and have like a lot of minis. This is the campaign for you. It's the very capital K, capital B. Wait, no, capital S.
There's,
Wait, hold on.
there's just a lot of minis. It's
There's
not a
a lot of
Kickstarter
mini.
board game.
Yeah, it's
Not
not a
much
Kickstarter.
cheerleading, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's not truly a Kickstarter board game, but it's definitely just a Kickstarter.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
7 sets, basically 7 mini sets with 300 plus minis.
seems
so
like a lot.
That's
it
a
does
lot of
seem
mini.
like a lot. If you're looking to like expand your collection instantly, this is actually an excellent way to do that.
You can get this one and the mushroom one and have your mushroom people hang out, do little dances.
And also
with
no
your
money
other
left
people.
in January. We know it's a rough month for Kickstarters because the holiday season has just happened. So,
Yes.
you know, be responsible. Only pick 1 or 2 of these.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you. But definitely check them out. There's some great stuff on here.
Yeah,
And
that's all we got.
that is all we have for Table Takes presented by Gen Con today. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We will be back next week, of course. Hawk, again,
See you
great
next
to have you
month.
here. We'll see
Thank
you
you
next
so
month.
much. Really
And
appreciate
we'll be
it.
talking about even more interesting things.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep,
today
we'll
I
work
feel
that
like
out.
I got a whole classroom's worth of lessons, and I can't wait to see what we learn next time. Anyway, we will see you next time. My name's Christian. I'm Banzai, Emma, Hawk. We're all here. Love you dearly. See you next week. Be safe. Roll some dice.
Stay tuned for
Oh.
new release rundown.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's going to be here for that?
Javion and me.
And Emma. So, I mean, you can stick around just for Emma.
Yeah.
Yes, for Emma.
We'll figure out what games we've got, hopefully very soon. See you in a few.